this is Tom from Dirk Witte Music Store in Utrecht, the Netherlands. Today we're taking a look at a very cool little vintage Gibson. This is not one of the LG ones, but it's very similar. But if we scooch a little bit over, we have this crowded headstock because this is a 12 string, a vintage Gibson 12 string. This is the Gibson LG-12 from the year 1967 in its original natural finish. Obviously called the LG-12 because it is basically an LG style guitar, acoustic, but with 12 strings instead of 6. Kind of like to play into the folk boom of those days, the 1960s. Like folk music was incredibly popular, and that genre also the LG line was actually very common to see. And then to have a 12 string obviously also makes it very cool for that type of music. You also heard that quite a lot in folk music in those days. So yeah, they came up with the Gibson LG-12. They're also known as the B2512, like the LG1 and the B25 are actually the exact same models, apart from the name basically. Yeah, I believe that this model was then in production from like the kind of like mid 1960s up until like the 1970s. So yeah, and this one is then from 1967, and it is in a very nice shape given its age. So well over 60 years old, almost 70 years old. And yeah, it also sounds and plays actually really great. So yeah, very cool to have a vintage 12 string. Don't know if we've ever had a vintage acoustic 12 string before, at least not in my time. So yeah, all the more cool. So let's dive into the specs. So like I said, this is obviously an LG body style. So also that you would find on the LG1, LG2, LG3, and then the B25, which again is just an LG1 basically. So it's kind of like this smaller, kind of like a slope shoulder style of body, kind of reminiscent of the J45, but then just shrunken down, so a little bit less wide, a little bit less deep, just overall just a little bit of smaller dimensions, with a solid spruce top, which is probably Sitka spruce, and then probably a laminated mahogany back and sides, but kind of hard to verify, but probably laminated, because this was kind of like one of the entry models that they had offered in those days in the 1960s. Same goes for the B25. Those are kind of like the entry level acoustics that they made. So yeah, again, probably then laminated mahogany back and sides. We do got some X bracing going on actually, because you can see this X running through, going underneath the top if you look inside of the sound hole. So that is different from the LG one, because that would get ladder bracing. We have then got a rosewood bridge, very large bridge, because it needs to fit all of those 12 strings, like all of those 12 ball ends. And also this being a 12 string, there's a lot more tension, so that probably also plays a factor that the bridge needs to be reinforced. So they also then, because of that, gave it a larger bridge. We've also then got the adjustable saddle, so that is actually quite cool. Also a thing that you would see in the 1960s on acoustics made by Gibson. The adjustable saddle that you can then make lower or higher with these screws right here on each side of the saddle. And then the saddle itself is probably made out of micarta, some sort of a synthetic material from the time. We've then obviously got 12 bridge pins, and what's actually kind of cool to see is that you've got bone bridge pins, or probably bone, because these definitely do look to be definitely not plastic. They also kind of like feel like bone. But on the kind of like the octave strings, you have these kind of smaller style bone bridge pins, and then these on the like normal strings, those appear to be plastic, because you can see like this, that mark that you would see on like plastic, you know, that little ridge, which you then do not see on these pins. So that's kind of cool. Also kind of hard to see, but a little bit different looking. And then we've also got the original pickguard, which is also a little bit thicker, or not even a little bit. This is quite a bit thicker material, just a black pickguard. Not entirely sure why it would be that thick, but it is probably also a unique spec of those days. Moving on to the neck, mahogany neck, which does appear to be a one-piece mahogany neck, so that's quite cool. Also a quite long neck, not really because of the neck, but mainly because of the headstock, obviously. As for the profile, kind of like a medium size. Obviously it is wider because we are dealing with 12 strings. But as for the depth and of the shape, quite medium style and nothing too exciting, like just nothing too special. So not too big, not too thin, nicely rounded, definitely a C shape. So overall very nice feeling and playing. Rosewood fingerboard with just your plain dot acrylic inlays. And then we've got what appears to be a bow nut. The nut width, by the way, is probably kind of like around 1 inch and 7/8 of an inch. Obviously because 12 strings, so it needs to be a bit wider. But it just plays very well. Doesn't feel overly wide, because 12 string acoustics can feel overly wide, but that is not the case with this. So it's actually just very nice playing. And then we've got your original headstock, which is also very plain looking. Just your plain, yeah, just mahogany, not even a headstock overlay or anything like that. Just plain mahogany with just your Gibson logo silkscreen, and then just a plain black trussrod cover. And on the back we've got the original 12 tuners, or kind of like 2 6 in a row Clusen style tuners with the plastic tips, which actually work quite well. And then last thing to mention, it also comes with a hardship case, not the original, but also kind of like a little bit more of a modern style case, but it is also relatively old, so it has probably been with the guitar for quite a while. So, but it is obviously very handy to have a case included, so you get that. So yeah, a very cool little 12 string made by Gibson from the 1960s. Definitely has a vibe of its own, definitely very folky, but sounds and plays actually really good, and it is also very inexpensive compared to like other models. This was also back in those days a very inexpensive model, so that also obviously plays a factor, but given its age and its condition, it is actually very accessible. So yeah, very cool little guitar. If you're in the market for a cool little unique 12 string, definitely take a look at this one. Very cool guitar. So yeah, let's see what it sounds like. But first, if you're interested in this 1967 Gibson LG-12, be sure to head over to the links in the description for further details. If you enjoyed this demo, be sure to like the video and to subscribe to the channel for more cool weekly demos of cool acoustic guitars like these, cool electrics, bass guitars, even of that really cool stuff. Also be sure to like us and follow us on the socials, Instagram and Facebook. Links are also in the description. With all that being said, let's see what this very cool 1967 Gibson LG-12 sounds like. I'm going to be playing you some chords and then also some lead style playing, so that you can get a good enough impression of what this very cool vintage Gibson 12 string acoustic sounds like. So let's move on to that part and let's take it for a spin.
Bye.